How's it going, everybody? It's me. I got something a little off topic today, but it's good. Trust me, I promise you. Something a little interesting that I wasn't quite expecting to bump into off of a game suggestion. Now, let me start off with a question here, guys. Have you been looking for a pretty decent side-scroller beat-em-up game? Well, I have for a very long time, and I still haven't quite found a really good one. This may be the one, though, however, so today we're going to talk about Dragon Spear. This is off of one of two game suggestions my sister's friend gave her, and another one is a Metroidvania that I will be playing on the channel soon. I'm not going to mention anything about it beyond this point, however. We're going to talk about Dragon Spear for a little while, because it's actually surprisingly really fucking well done. So, obviously, as many of these games go, there are a number of different characters and classes that you can play as. I decided to pick the ranged pirate lady, Tanya, whereas Holly picked, I think, Miu, the fucking thief assassin lady, and of course Chelsea is the mage right now, so I have a couple of people that I'm playing with right now, just those two at the moment. This game is mostly dead, and I should mention immediately right off the bat here that this was originally, I believe, a mobile game that got ported to PC. If not, then it was a console, like, kind of indie title for the PS4 that I have seen, and the Xbox. It might just be Xbox, because I see the controller on here in the options that got ported over to PC. So, that being said, expect everything that you would expect from something that was ported from, like, a mobile game, because it's going to feel like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is an awful game by any stretch of the imagination. This game is great. For one, it's beautiful. For two, it runs spectacularly. And for three, there's a surprising amount of good shit here. It's not just fucking garbage, middle-of-the-road, acceptable, like, hack-and-slash fucking beat-em-up stuff. This is a pretty good side-scroller game. It really holds up very well on its own. The fucking controls are tight. And we'll get into more what I mean with this one later on when we actually showcase the combat. But let's just go with the features for now, because there's like a shitload of gear and all this other stuff you can get in the game. It's, of course, a dungeon crawler instance-based thing, so you're going to be grinding for gear. You upgrade that gear, you move on to the next tier of difficulty. However, if there's one thing that I should mention right now, it's not wholly 100% based off of your gear in this game. There is a large degree of skill. And if you are underclassed, and the content that you're doing simply outscales you, you can still succeed surprisingly well, especially if you set up, like, skill runes and your skill sets and all this stuff to fit the fight, and you understand how the enemy works. Like, it just feels a lot more like, and I hate to say it this way because it's a fucking meme, but it feels a little bit more Dark Souls-y in that regard, where it's really just learning enemy patterns and just beating your head against a wall until you nail it down. It's a pretty fucking solid game that way, and I can appreciate that it's not just all about alt-scaling the content and just beating the shit out of everything. So anyway, as you guys can see here, this is the Gap of Abyss. This is a dungeon area where you instance matchmake with up to 3 other people. I'm just going in by myself because I know that I can handle this boss at least. And this isn't just due to, like, my level or anything, it's just this boss is a little bit easier than the other shit that I've been used to. We'll get into one of the more fucking retardedly difficult ones in a minute, but this is what the game essentially is right here. You have a dodge key that refreshes, I believe, after 4 to 5 seconds or so, and most of it really is just mastering your directions and turning around, because again, it's 2D. You're aiming left or right when you're doing your skills. You have 4 skills and an ultimate that charges as you deal damage to the enemy, as well as a set bonus skill that you get, and you can actually swap your set bonuses on your gears by inscribing that set bonus onto a new piece. So if you really like a set bonus, you can carry it on throughout the game. There is actually a fucking reason to the early game gear sets that you can get in this game, and you can stack them out to the late game, from what I am understanding about this, which is phenomenal, and kind of extends the content that you have in the game, because from what I see, there's not a lot of content in this game. It's one of the bigger downfalls I can foresee right now, because we're already a really good chunk into the game. This being said, however, of the content that's in the game, there's a lot of replay value here, since every single set that you get in the game, once you obtain a gear piece, you can actually set it as a sort of a vanity item. to make whatever gear that you're wearing in the game look like a previous set that you really liked, which is pretty dope, or you can just make it invisible entirely and just go with the default set on your character. For example, I really like the tricorn that Tanya wears by default, so I'm usually just doing her default hairstyle. As you can imagine, most of the content that does exist in the game is going to be the Gap of Abyss. Understand that these dungeons are supposed to be balanced around 4 players, so you're going to have a rough time if you're going into this game as just a single person if you happen to really luck out and not bump into other people in the game, which is going to happen a lot. We were running around for... I have 12 hours clocked into the game. Me, Chelsea, and Holly have been running around doing a bunch of runs. We bumped into 2 people. And one of the 2 people was the friend that Chelsea had that recommended the game in the first place, which was really hilarious. We didn't even expect to bump into them. They just were in one of our runs, and we're like, hey, that's the person right there. It was pretty interesting. So, in order to showcase what I'm talking about when I say that the game is more difficulty-oriented, because me just steamrolling over the hardest Gap of Abyss boss right now, from what it looks like from you guys' perspective, it's probably not doing me any favors in saying that, so... We're going to fight an enemy here. I believe it is Nymph Anemone is her name or some shit like that. This spider plant thing hits harder than anything in the fucking game that we have ever fought up until this point in time. Me and Holly had such a rough time with this bitch, fighting her over and over and over and over and over again. We both eventually kept doing solo runs until we could beat her ourselves to really understand the patterns, and now she's not as much as a problem, though last night when we were still trying to grind her, which we were at the same, difficulty, we still had all the gear that we have at this exact time right now. We were having issues still trying to beat her. We had a 25, maybe 30% success chance going through it, just us 2, so she's really fucking difficult. And the reason being is because when you beat her, you have access to better unique sets from the shop that are a little bit more lucrative in price, so there's a reasoning for why she has a harder difficulty around her versus other enemies. She's meant to fuck you up. And this original run probably doesn't showcase that too terribly well because I'm just going around all of her different attacks, though, just to showcase the solo first, but I'll go back through on a second run after here to show you how hard she hits. She literally 2-shots my character here. And 1400 HP is a lot of fucking HP for all the different gears that I can be wearing right now. That is with 2 pieces of gear with an affix on them that brings up my max HP it's in levels, level 1 through 5, I think, for how much it increases things. And it's max HP level 2 on 2 of my sets, which are the most new set that I could obtain from the Deus Ex Machina, which I was just fighting before this. So I'm really stacked out in gear right now, have a shitload of HP, and she can still 2-shot my ass. And she didn't even crit on her strike. That claw attack that actually kills me on the second run can do way more than 777 points of damage. So, yeah, she fucking hurts. Okay, so let's go ahead and just summarize everything in the game right here. We're approaching that 10-minute mark, so let's just go ahead and hit all of the points that I need to hit then, shall we? Dragon Spear. I believe it's a $15 game on Steam right now. That was originally an Android port, moving over to PC. It's pretty solid, got a couple of good things going for it. For the most part, what you're going to be doing in the game is going through all of the different chapters. There are 8 in total, all the way, I believe, 9 levels in each chapter. So 1-1 through 1-9, then 2-1 through 2-9, etc., 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 all the way through 8 chapters, and you will sequentially unlock dungeons in the Gap of Abyss to fight with other people. As you progress the game, through each chapter you will be unlocking sequentially better sets that will help you take on the next tiers of difficulty with better ease than the previous set that you had on before, as well as having several other sets that you can craft based off of Gap of Abyss dungeon bosses, and special sets that you can buy from the store by beating certain dungeons. There are also a myriad and plethora of other fashion options that you can get through all of these same sets, and anything previous that you had before. Some sets have set bonuses on them that give you different special abilities, as well as just passive abilities like Defense plus 3, and all of this other shit as well that further increases the versatility of the different gears that you're putting on, as well as pets that do their own special abilities, And of course, enhancing the very gear pieces themselves to make them more and more potent if you want to use a previous set, since some gear pieces in the game are very specific for finding the right affixes that you want to buff a certain skill or do a certain thing that you would like. This, in a nutshell, summarizes basically everything content-wise that is available in this game. There is indeed a story mode to the game where you can read character dialogue and such. Some of it seems to be not quite there translation-wise, but all in all, you can perfectly understand what everybody is saying. It's not an amazing storyline, but it's functional. As far as the pros go with Dragon Spear, number one, like I said, graphically, it's beautiful, and it runs really well for what it is. Nothing is overly clunky in any way, shape, or form. It runs smooth. It works exceedingly well for what it is. The combat has a good amount of versatility to it for everything that you can do. You have a number of runes you can put into your skills, 8 skills in total, and 2 ultimate skills, and just a number of set skills that you can get from the different fucking armor sets in the game that just add that little bit more versatility. It's not way over the top like something like Dungeon Fighter Online would be with the gear versatility, but it's pretty surprisingly diverse. Furthermore, when in combat, the most important thing is that the controls are really tight. It feels like it is on the player and not so much the game not functioning properly whenever that you get hit by something or whenever things happen that aren't necessarily in your favor. Because of that, it makes the combat just that much more satisfying when you do succeed in beating a Gap of Abyss boss. It doesn't feel like you're just hammering away at them for fucking 30 minutes because your gear isn't quite up to par and you can't do enough damage. You're the person who beat the run, it's not your gear that did it for you. Although I will say that some of the ads in these dungeons do seem like they have a little bit more HP than they should, but the bosses themselves seem a hell of a lot more balanced. One other thing that I forgot to touch on earlier with the combat is that the telegraph rings and all of the spots where the enemy attacks hit, they are pretty spot on. There were only a few times where I feel like I was hit from outside of the telegraph rings, but 99% of the time it seems to work perfectly well. It could have just been because I was very sluggish and it was late in the night. As far as the cons are concerned, one of the biggest ones is, of course, the amount of content that is available in the game. Like I said, I have gone through the game for 12 hours now, and I have unlocked 8 of the 23 Gap of Abyss dungeons. 16 of them are unlocked through the storyline, and the rest of them, I believe, are raids that you unlock by beating the previous one to unlock the next, which is your end game. How I see it is if you binge and play a lot of this game in a relatively short amount of time, you're going to exhaust the content much faster than you would in various other games that I have played. Like Dungeon Fighter Online, for example. The only other real con that I can put on this list is the fact that a lot of this game seems to be RNG dependent, so you're going to be running a lot of these Gap of Abyss dungeons over and over and over and over again until you get the lucky drop, and this is tragic if you're somebody like Holly that's going to collect every pet in the game just for the collection purposes. So, the only reason why I'm putting it as a con is because it's been done far more intuitively in various other MMOs in the past. Like maybe you could get a currency from that run, and after enough runs you can guarantee a rare drop by spending the currency. So when you rely on just RNG itself, it doesn't work. It really just doesn't work. We're beyond that. We're a little more intuitive than that at this point in time. Any other cons beyond this point are really just more nitpicky than anything else, but I'll go ahead and touch on a couple of smaller ones that aren't as important. One of the main ones is in the way that the game is sold. You can't access every single character from the base package. You'll have to buy the deluxe, which is actually $20, to have access to the other 3 characters, one of them being my character, the pirate ranged character. There is a mage pack, and then Miyu, the assassin. Me, Chelsea, and Holly are all playing on the pack characters. Naturally, of course, the 3 default characters that you can play, 2 of them are men, and not as adorably bikini-clad and stuff. So, yeah, sex sells as it goes. Also, the other one nitpicky con would be the fact that you can't seem to have more than one of the same character type saved. And I don't know how you just delete a single character if you wanted to do that. I'm pretty sure that there's a way around it in some way, shape, or form, or at least I would like to believe, but I haven't gone into it enough, and it saves a singular character on that character selection area, and that's it. That's all she wrote right there, so I feel like that could have been done a little bit better. And that's about it for me, guys. I'm gonna wrap up the video right here. Just, this game's really good. For like a $15 game on Steam, it is really fucking good for a side-scroller beat-em-up. It does what it needs to do, and then some. It's got some good charm. I like the characters, I like the way that the game is, and it's been very enjoyable so far. Though I feel like the hype and the enjoyment is going to wear off pretty quickly versus other titles, because again, it's just not as broad in what you can do versus other games out there. So if you just look at it as an indie title that'll bide your time for a little while, and you could sink massive amounts of time to get all the sets and all the other things depending on what you want to do in the game, then yeah, it's great. But do I think that you should get the game if you're looking for something to sink an excessive amount of time into? No, because it's probably not going to work out too well for you. You'll burn through the content relatively quickly, especially if you're used to fighter games and all of the usual mechanics associated with them. Understanding animations, cancels, you know, all of that shit, and trying to get, like, really into the game. This isn't something that you're going to be able to get super hardcore into, I can guarantee you. So I think that you guys should pick it up if you want to find a pretty decent side-scroller game that'll bide your time for a little while. Try to repopulate the game a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Get a couple of buddies into it. It's really good. I think it's definitely worth the price tag that's on it. Maybe a little more steep for other people, but for $20 to access all the characters, and assuming that you're going through all of the characters to try them out, and bring them to the end game, and buy all your sets and stuff, and fuck around with the game, really, then yeah, I think it is more than worth it. I don't think the game is mediocre in any way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. It's definitely above average. Is it brilliant and perfect? No, far from it, but it's definitely not a mediocre title that just barely reaches an acceptable side-scroller beat-em-up. You have a pretty decent amount of charm here. There aren't really characters that I dislike, and to kind of spoil one thing a little later on in the game, like, for example, they have, like, this bearded midget mage character that is absolutely 100% female, but she has, like, a big-ass white Gandalf beard for some reason, and me, Holly, Cameron, and Chelsea were all like, what the fuck is happening with that character? Like, it's just, it's interesting and weird. Like, I don't know. I like the game. It's charming, it's really well done, and a lot of it is just more mechanically driven rather than just erroneous, pointless shit put into it to just make it an acceptable and like every other dungeon crawler game. Like, there seems to be more of a point to a lot of the shit that they were putting in there, and the devs seem to have, again, I don't know what the devs were thinking, but they seem to have actually thought about what they're doing and how the player would react and do, like, you know, play the game, essentially. Things seem a little bit more intentional rather than uninspired. So, there we go. Done. I will see you guys later. Take it easy.
Wow!